The alarm screamed through the corridors of Outpost 7 like a living thing. Commander Derek Powell stood in the control room and watched the screens flicker with red warning lights. The Zerethian Empire had come to Earth, not to talk, not to make peace. They came to take. Derek had fought his whole life to protect humanity. He was 53 years old with gray hair and a face marked by decades of hard decisions. His hands shook as he typed commands. The outpost had maybe 30 minutes before the Zerethian strike team would tear through the walls. 30 minutes to save what he could save. The soldiers around him moved fast. They knew what was coming. The Zerethians did not take prisoners for mercy. They took prisoners for study. They wanted to understand the humans they would conquer so they could break them more completely. In the lower levels of the outpost, Melissa Torres worked alone in the communication hub. She was 28 years old and smart. Very smart. Her job was to keep the communication systems running. Her real job was to make sure no human signal went out without being checked first. She made sure Earth knew what was coming. When the alarm hit, Melissa did not panic. She was trained for this. She grabbed the data storage device and shoved it into her pocket. The device held the locations of every human settlement on Earth. The Zerethians could not have this information. It would mean death for billions. The power flickered. The lights went red. Melissa ran to the emergency exit and pushed hard. The door opened and she moved into the dark corridor. Her heart was loud in her ears, but her mind was clear. She had to get to the secure room on level 3. If she could make it there, if she could lock the door, the soldiers could come get her when things were safe again. The floor shook. Something massive hit the outer wall. The Zerethians had opened fire. Melissa ran faster. She did not see the figure blocking her path until it was too late. The Zerethian was huge. 8 feet tall. His skin was bright blue like a clear sky, but his eyes were cold and black. He wore armor that looked like it was part of his body. Weapons hung on his arms and his legs. His claws were long and sharp, and his teeth were visible when he opened his mouth to roar. His name was Kelthus. He had been made to be a weapon. The Zerethian conquest academies had taken him when he was young and turned him into something that only knew how to fight and take and destroy. He had conquered 16 worlds. He had torn down cities and broken armies. He had never heard the word mercy spoken with anything but disgust. Kelthus saw Melissa, and his body moved on pure training. He did not think. He did not hesitate. She was prey. She was target. His massive hand reached out and grabbed her by the collar of her shirt. He lifted her like she was nothing. Her feet left the ground. Her hands grabbed at his arm, but his scales were hard and thick. Her fingers could not hurt him. Melissa should have been afraid. Any human should have been afraid. Kelthus had killed thousands. His hands had ended lives without counting them. His hands had ended Lam. His eyes had watched cities burn and felt nothing. But Melissa Torres did something different. She stopped fighting. She went completely still. She took a breath, and she looked directly into his cold black eyes. And she spoke. Her voice was calm and clear. Not soft. Not trying to beg or trick him. Just honest words spoken into the face of a being that was built to be a killer. "You are strong," she said. "Your body is strong. Your weapons are strong. But that strength is not really yours. It was given to you. You did not choose it. You did not earn it. Someone else made you into a weapon and told you that this was power. But power that you do not choose is just slavery. You are a slave dressed up in armor and told to call it glory." Kelthus froze. No prey had ever spoken to him this way. Not once in his whole life. Humans screamed or fought or begged. They cried. They tried to run. They fell to their knees. He had heard every sound that fear made, but he had never heard truth spoken with such quiet confidence. What does it feel like? Melissa asked. To be a tool? To know that you will do what you are told until you are broken or destroyed? To never choose your own path? Is that really power, or is that just the slow death of everything inside you that makes you a person? Kelphas's grip loosened. Not much, but enough that Melissa could feel the change. She did not pull away. She did not try to run. She kept her eyes on his eyes. I am just a person, Melissa said. I am weak compared to you. I am slow. I am small. I will probably die today. But I know what I choose. I know who I am. I know why I'm still fighting even when I'm afraid. Can you say that? Do you even know who you are under all that armor and all those orders? Kelphas said nothing. His hand held her, but his mind was somewhere else. The certainty that had lived in him his whole life was cracking. Just a little bit. But it was cracking. The ground shook again. Explosions echoed through the corridors. The battle was getting closer. Kelphas had orders. He had to secure the human specimens and take them to the extraction ship. He had to complete his mission. He looked at Melissa Torres for a long moment. Her eyes did not show fear. They showed something else. Something he did not have a word for. Then Kelphas turned and walked down the corridor. He carried Melissa with him. Not as a captive. Not yet. As something that he needed to understand better. Behind them, the outpost burned. Humans died. The Zerethian conquest continued just as it always had. But something had changed inside the blue-skinned warrior. Something had broken open that could never be fully closed again. And Kelphas, the perfect weapon, the unstoppable soldier, had learned his first word: silence. The Zerethian extraction ship was a machine built for war and nothing else. It was long and angular and covered in weapons. Inside, the walls were made of cold metal. There were no windows. The air was thick and hot because Zerethians liked heat. Humans found it hard to breathe. Kelphas carried Melissa through the corridors of the ship. The other warriors stopped and watched him pass. Kelphas was their commander. He was the strongest. He always completed his missions. But something was wrong. They could see it in the way he moved. He was not moving like a victorious soldier. He was moving like someone thinking too hard. The holding area was a cage made of energy. It could hold strong things. It could hurt things that tried to escape. Kelphas placed Melissa inside, and the energy walls snapped into place around her. She was trapped. When he turned to leave, one of the other warriors stepped forward. His name was Vorthan, and he was nearly as large as Kelphas. He had served with Kelphas for 5 years. How many specimens did you take? Vorthan asked. Kelphas did not answer right away. This was unusual. Kelphas always answered questions from his soldiers quickly. 1, Kelphas said. Vorthan's eyes moved to look at Melissa. Then back to Kelphas. Just 1? Why? The humans had more soldiers. We saw them on the scanners. 1 was necessary, Kelphas said. Vorthan waited for more explanation. Kelphas gave none. He turned and walked away. This made Vorthan confused, but he did not follow. Officers did not need to explain their choices. Through the energy bars of her cage, Melissa watched Kelphas leave. She did not know if her words had actually changed anything. She did not know if she had made things better or worse. But she knew that he had hesitated. And hesitation in a being like that was everything. The hours passed slowly. The ship moved through space. Melissa sat on the cold floor of her cage. Around her, the ship hummed with the sound of engines. Zerethian soldiers moved through the corridors. None of them spoke to her. None of them came near. Then Kelphas returned. He stood outside the cage and looked at her. For a long time, he said nothing. His face was hard and still, but his eyes were moving. He was thinking about something. Why did you speak to me?" he asked finally. Melissa stood up. She walked to the edge of the energy barrier. She did not touch it. The barrier would burn skin. "Because I thought you might listen," she said. "Because I thought that maybe under all that training and all those orders, there was something that could still hear the truth. I was not sure, but I had nothing to lose by trying." Kelthus was quiet again. "I have always known what to do," he said. "The academies taught me. The officers command me. I follow. This is what makes me strong. This is why I am not dead like weaker beings. Order, obedience, power. Those things kept you alive," Melissa said. "But are you actually living?" "There is a difference between alive and living." Kelthus did not respond to this. Instead, he asked her more questions. About Earth, about humans, about why she did not cry or beg or try to trick him. Melissa told him about her father. Her father was an engineer who built things. Not weapons. Things that help people. Machines that made life better. He had died 5 years before trying to save other people from a building fire. She told him about her mother who was a teacher. Her mother taught children to read and write and think for themselves. She taught them that the world was big and that they could understand it, if they tried hard enough. She told him about her sister, who was only 12 years old. Her sister loved music and wanted to be a doctor. Her sister did not know that the Zerethians were coming. Her sister just lived her life and believed that tomorrow would come. Kelthus listened to all of this. He listened for hours. And he did not speak. Other soldiers came and asked him about the specimen. They wanted to know if the human was still alive, if she was damaged, if she could be used for the conquest assessment. Kelthus gave them short answers. 1 word, 2 words. Nevermore. Is the human ready? Another officer asked. No, Kelthus said. When will she be ready? Kelthus did not answer this question at all. Day after day, the ship traveled through space. Melissa stayed in the cage. Kelthus came often, and they talked. She told him about music and art, and the way humans could look at the stars and imagine better worlds. She told him about love and why humans would die to protect people they cared about. She told him about hope, which was the belief that tomorrow could be better than today. Eld has absorbed all of this. He watched her sleep in the cage. He watched the way she moved when she thought no one was looking. She was afraid. He could see that. But she was not broken. She was not giving up. She was waiting. She was believing that somehow something would change. And Kelthus understood, in a way that made his whole body hurt, that he had spent his whole life running from these exact things. From hope, from love, from the idea that tomorrow could be anything other than more orders and more killing. He had been made to be empty. And now, standing in front of this human woman, he was starting to understand what he had lost. So he stayed silent. Silence was safer than words. Silence was where he could hide what was breaking inside him. Silence was where he could pretend, for just a few hours more, that everything was still the same, but the silence was a lie. And Kelthus was finally learning what lies cost. The underground bunker was hidden deep below the mountains of the western continent. Commander Derek Powell had moved his operations there after the outpost was destroyed. The bunker was built to survive an invasion. It was built with weapons and thick walls and the last of humanity's hope. When Melissa Torres walked out of the elevator with an 8-foot-tall blue-skinned Zerethian behind her, the soldiers in the bunker went to full alert. Weapons came up. Orders were shouted. Everyone was moving toward the emergency protocols that would seal off the bunker from the outside world. Melissa held up her hands. Stop, she said. All of you stop. This is Kelthus. He is not here to hurt us. He is here to help us. Derek Powell stepped forward. He was older and tired, but his mind was still sharp. He looked at the Zerethian warrior carefully. He looked at Melissa. "Explain," Derek said. So Melissa told the story. She told him about the capture and the silence and the way Kelphas had changed over the hours of travel. She told him about the command station and the way Kelphas had fought against his own empire to save her. She told him that Kelphas wanted to help defend Earth. Derek listened to all of this. Then he looked directly at Kelphas. "If you are lying, if this is some trick, I will find a way to kill you," Derek said. "I do not know how yet, but I will find a way." "I believe you," Kelphas said. And there was no doubt in his voice. Derek made a decision. He had not survived this long by being cautious when caution would destroy him. He had survived by taking risks when the situation demanded them. Kelphas was a weapon, but he was a weapon that might choose to point his power in the right direction. "Then we will work together," Derek said. Over the next days, Kelphas taught the human soldiers everything he knew about the Zerethian military. He taught them about the command structure and how orders flowed from the top down. He taught them that Zerethian soldiers were trained to follow, not to think. They were taught to see the enemy as weak and inferior. If that image could be shattered, if the Zerethians could be made to see humans as dangerous, it would change everything. The soldiers listened carefully. They asked questions. Kelphas answered with honesty and clarity. He had been an officer in the Zerethian army. He knew how it worked from the inside. One young soldier named Paul asked him a direct question. "How many humans can one Zerethian fighter kill?" Kelphas thought about this carefully. "A trained Zerethian warrior can kill about 50 untrained humans in direct combat," he said. "But Zerethians believe all humans are untrained. We believe that the sight of a Zerethian warrior will break human will. This is our weakness. If humans do not break, if humans stand and fight, the Zerethian certainty will shatter. So we have to be willing to die?" Paul asked. "Yes," Kelphas said. "That is the requirement. The Zerethians are willing to die for the Empire. You must be willing to die for your people. When the Zerethian sees that you are willing to die for something, something changes. The balance shifts." These conversations continued. Kelphas ate human food for the first time. The bunker had simple things: rice, bread, vegetables. Kelphas tried each one carefully. His face did not show much change when he ate them. His body had been built for efficiency, not pleasure. But he kept trying new things. He kept trying to understand. One day, one of the soldiers brought his family to the bunker. The man's name was Charles, and he had a wife named Linda and a daughter named Emma, who was 7 years old. The bunker had protocols about family. People needed reasons to fight. People needed to know what they were protecting. Emma saw Kelphas and she was not afraid. She should have been afraid. He was massive and blue and scarred from countless battles. But Emma just looked at him with curiosity. "Are you a bad guy?" she asked. "I was," Kelphas said. "I am not sure what I am now. Do you want to be a good guy?" Emma asked. Kelphas looked at this small human. This child who had never known anything but the fear of invasion. This child who still believed that someone could change from bad to good. "Yes," he said. "I want that very much." Emma smiled at him. That night, Kelphas stood in the quiet corridors of the bunker. Melissa found him standing in the darkness. She had been looking for him. They had grown close during the journey to Earth, and closer still during the training with Derek's soldiers. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I am thinking about that child," Kelphas said. "In the Zerethian academies, children like that are removed at birth and put into breeding programs. They are raised to be soldiers or to be nothing. They never have the chance to choose who they become. They never have the chance to smile at a stranger and believe that they might become good." "You did that," Melissa said. "You chose to become good. Is it enough?" Kelphas asked. Melissa took his hand. His claws were sharp, but his grip was gentle. "It is more than most creatures ever try to do," she said, outside, in the sky above the bunker. The Zerethian fleet was moving closer. Days away, maybe hours away. The invasion was coming. All the training, all the preparation, all the hope that Kelthas had brought would be tested in the next battle. But for now, in this moment, Kelthas felt something he had never felt before. He felt like he belonged somewhere. He felt like his strength had a purpose. He felt like tomorrow might matter. That was worth everything he had lost. The Zerethian command station orbited the planet that was once human. The command center was large and cold, and full of officers who only cared about conquest. The supreme commander was a female named Voss. She was older than most of the males and twice as hard. She had conquered more worlds than anyone alive. She believed in the power of the Zerethian Empire like other beings believed in breathing. When Kelthas' extraction ship arrived, Voss expected a full report. She expected to hear about the conquered outpost. She expected to hear about the human soldiers who had been destroyed. She expected to hear about the specimens that had been taken for study. Instead, she got a message that made her eyes narrow to slits. Kelthas was requesting time with the human specimen, alone. He wanted to continue interviews before the specimen was processed and studied. He said the specimen might have information about human, military structure that could be valuable. Voss looked at the message for a long time. Then she sent new orders. The human specimen was to be brought to the command station immediately. There would be an execution broadcast across the Empire. The Empire needed to see that humans died when they were brought before Zerethian power. It did not matter that this human was just one person. Death would show strength. Death would show certainty. The command chamber was large. The walls were made of metal that reflected the light from 1,000 small lights. Officers stood in organized rows. The Empire ran on order and clarity and the absolute acceptance of command. Melissa was brought into the chamber. Her hands were bound. She was smaller than everyone around her, weaker. The Zerethians looked at her like she was already dead. Kelthas stood in the center of the chamber, opposite Voss. He had not been told about the execution order. He only knew that he had been summoned. He only knew that Melissa had been taken from the cage. Voss stood and looked down at Kelthas from her seat of command. "Kelthas," she said, "you request more time with this human. This is unusual. You have never made such a request before. You have always understood that efficiency and speed are what matter. Waste is unacceptable." Kelthas looked at Melissa. She was afraid now. He could see it in the way her body held itself. But she was not broken. Even here, even now, she was not broken. "The human has knowledge," Kelthas said. "You can extract knowledge from a dead human as well as a living one," Voss said. "The science will examine the corpse just as carefully. Order the execution." Kelthas did not move. He did not give the order. Voss's eyes hardened. "I am ordering you to execute this human. It is a direct command from the Supreme Commander. What is your hesitation?" Kelthas looked at the officers around him. He looked at Voss. He looked at the way the Empire had organized itself around. Power and domination and the belief that the strong had the right to kill the weak without reason or mercy. And he understood that if he gave the order, he would lose Melissa. But more than that, he would lose himself. "I will not execute the human," Kelthas said. The chamber went completely silent. Voss stood up from her seat. Her hand moved toward her weapon. "You refuse a direct order?" "I refuse," Kelthas said. The other officers began to move. Hands reached for weapons. Kelthas had declared himself an enemy of the Empire. The Zerethian military moved with perfect speed. They had been trained for this. They moved to surround him, but Kelthas was faster, and he was stronger. And now, for the first time, He had a reason to fight that was not in order. He had a reason to fight that came from inside him. He moved like a storm. 2 officers went down immediately. A third tried to shoot him, and Kelthus took the weapon from his hands and used it against the others. The chamber erupted into chaos and violence. Zerethian soldiers were trained to be perfect fighters, but they were trained to fight as units. They were trained to follow orders. None of them had ever had to think for themselves in combat. Kelthus had only one thought: get Melissa out. Move! He yelled at her. Melissa ran toward the corridor behind the main chamber. Her hands were still bound, but she was moving. Officers tried to stop her, and Kelthus intercepted them. His body was a weapon, and he was using it for the first time, not because he had been ordered to, but because he had chosen to. Voss watched from her elevated seat, her face full of fury. She raised her own weapon. "You are exiled," she screamed. "You are declared an enemy of the Empire. Every Zerethian in existence will hunt you. Your name will be forgotten. Your genetics will be erased from our records. You are nothing." Kelthus did not answer. He did not slow down. He just ran toward Melissa, and together they moved through the corridors of the command station. Soldiers tried to stop them, but Kelthus was moving with purpose now. His body was a force, and nothing could slow him. They reached a small transport ship. Kelthus broke the lock with his bare hands. He pulled Melissa inside and began the launch sequence. The ship shook as weapons fired at them from the station. The Zerethian Empire was trying to destroy him, but the little transport was fast. It was small enough to move through the defense grid, and Kelthus knew every system that the Empire had built. He had helped build some of them. The transport broke free from the station and shot toward Earth below. In the darkness of space, Kelthus looked at Melissa. She was breathing hard. Her eyes were wide. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you do that? You were safe. You were in command. You could have stayed." Kelthus used his claws to cut the bonds from her wrists. "Because you were right," he said simply. "Because power that comes from killing innocent people is not power at all. Because for the first time, I want to choose my own path. And the path I choose leads away from the Empire. The path I choose leads toward Earth, toward humans, toward a world where strength means something different than conquest." The little ship descended through the atmosphere. Below them, Earth was green and blue and alive. Kelthus had just become a traitor to everything he had ever known, and he had never felt more like himself. The Zerethian fleet arrived in Earth orbit like a storm of metal and fire. 100 warships, 300 transport vessels, 10,000 soldiers. The Zerethian Empire had sent everything they thought was necessary to crush human resistance in less than an hour. Commander Derek Powell stood in the command center of the bunker and watched the screens. The fleet hung above Earth like a threat of death. But Derek did not despair. He had known this day was coming. Every soldier under his command had known it. They had prepared. Kelthus stood beside Derek. His massive frame was covered with the armor and weapons of human soldiers. The armor was too small for him, but he wore it anyway. It was a symbol of his choice. He was part of the human defense now. "They will open with orbital bombardment," Kelthus said. "They believe that destroying your cities will break your will to fight. The Zerethian commander does not understand that you are willing to lose everything. Zerethians are never willing to lose anything. This is why you will win." The bombardment began. The ships above the planet fired weapons of terrible power. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, weapons that had destroyed cities on 1,000 worlds. But the humans were not in the cities. The humans were underground. The cities burned, but the people survived. Then the Zerethian soldiers came down in transport ships. Thousands of them. The greatest military force that had ever existed on Earth. They moved with perfect discipline and perfect confidence. They had never lost. They did not know how to fail. The first squad of Zerethian soldiers encountered human resistance in the ruins of what had once been a city center. 20 Zerethians, 50 human soldiers. The humans had no armor like the Zerethians. The humans had no weapons that could compare. By all calculation, the humans should have died in minutes, but Kelthas had taught them something. He had taught them that Zerethians expected terror. They expected humans to break. When humans did not break, when humans came forward and fought with weapons designed to damage Zerethian armor, the certainty in the Zerethian soldiers began to fracture. The battle lasted hours. Half the human soldiers died. 15 of the Zerethians fell. This was impossible. This was wrong. Zerethians did not die to prey animals. The Zerethian command began to change its strategy. The soldiers were pulled back. A new wave of troops went in with different tactics. But the humans were ready. Melissa had helped organize the defense. She knew how Zerethian thinking worked. She knew how to predict their moves. Kelthas led a group of human soldiers against a Zerethian assault on the western bunker entrance. His body was a weapon, but he was using it to protect humans, not destroy them. He stood in the gap and took fire meant for humans behind him. His armor burned and scarred, but he did not fall. A Zerethian commander named Vex tried to push past Kelthas. Vex had served with Kelthas for years. Vex could not understand why Kelthas was fighting with these weak prey animals. "You are betraying your own kind," Vex said. "I am betraying a system that made me into a tool," Kelthas said. "I am choosing my own kind now. The kind that fights for something other than conquest." Kelthas and Vex fought. Two of the strongest warriors the Zerethian Empire had ever created. But Kelthas was fighting for something. Vex was fighting because he had been ordered to. The difference mattered. Vex fell. Kelthas stood over his fallen brother warrior and felt sadness for the first time in his life. Hours passed. The battle raged across the surface of Earth. Humans died. Zerethians died. The balance shifted back and forth. But it was shifting. The human casualties were lower than the human forces predicted. The Zerethian certainty was cracking with every soldier that fell to human weapons. Then Melissa did something that changed everything. She broke into the Zerethian communications network using a code that Kelthas had provided. She had a message for every Zerethian soldier fighting on Earth. The message said, "We are the Zerethian Empire. We are perfect. We are unstoppable. We will conquer all worlds." But humans have shown us something today that we did not know. We have shown us that we can fall. We have shown that we can break. If we can break here, on this small world, then we can break anywhere. The message was the truth. It was the kind of truth that destroyed certainty. It was the kind of truth that made soldiers stop and think. And thinking was something the Zerethian military had never trained for. The resistance grew. More humans stood up and fought. The Zerethian advance slowed. Then it stopped. Then it reversed. In the sky, the Zerethian fleet made a decision. They could stay and fight and possibly lose. Or they could leave and fight another day. The Empire had never been forced to make this choice before. But now they were facing something they did not understand. They were facing a species willing to die for freedom. And the Zerethian Empire, which had only been trained to kill for conquest, did not know how to fight that. The fleet retreated. Slowly at first. Then quickly. The Zerethian soldiers, who were still on the ground, were ordered to withdraw to the transport ships. The Empire was in retreat. Derek Powell stood in the command center and watched the screens. The Zerethian fleet moved away from Earth. The battle was over. Humanity had survived. Kelthas and Melissa stood together on the surface of the burned-out city. Around them, human soldiers were treating wounded and gathering their dead. The sky was clear of Zerethian warships. The blue planet below showed wounds but also life. Kelthas reached out and gently touched Melissa's shoulder. Not a grab. Not a hold. A touch that showed respect and care. Melissa looked up at him. "You were right," Kelthas said. "You were right that day when I grabbed your collar. True strength is not about holding others down. True strength is about choosing to lift others up. I was a tool. Now I am something different. Now I have a choice. And I choose to stand here. With you. With your people. Protecting the weak instead of crushing them." Melissa smiled. She was exhausted and afraid and sad about all the humans who had fallen. But she was also alive. And the world was still turning. "You found the answer to your own question," Melissa said. "When I asked you what it felt like to be a tool, to be a slave dressed in armor, you found out that it felt empty. And when you chose to be something different, when you chose to have a purpose that came from inside you instead of orders from outside, you found out what power really is." Kelthas looked at the burned city. He looked at the humans moving among the ruins. He looked at the small girl named Emma running toward her parents who had survived the battle. "Why was I silent?" he asked. "That day when I grabbed your collar. Why could I not speak?" "Because your old self was dying," Melissa said. "Your old voice, the voice of the weapon and the tool, was breaking. And the new voice, the voice of someone who could choose, had not yet learned how to speak. You were silent because you were becoming something new." Kelthas nodded. He understood now. The Zerethian Empire would come back. The galaxy was not safe. There would be more battles, more struggles, more death. But Kelthas had learned something that the Empire could never teach. He had learned that change was possible. He had learned that one person could choose a different path. He had learned that the greatest strength was not in conquering the world. The greatest strength was in choosing to protect it. And in that moment, with Melissa beside him, an Earth sun warm on his blue skin, Kelthas finally found his voice again. Not the voice of the conquest academies, not the voice of orders and obedience, but his own voice, the voice of someone who was finally, truly free.